Welcome to the channel. Memorial Day weekend, a time for cookouts, parades, and remembrance. But not all who celebrate make it home. Some vanish. Some are changed. And some uncover things that were never meant to be found. These are 10 disturbing true Memorial Day horror stories, real tales of long weekends gone wrong. Let's begin. It was Memorial Day weekend, and my friend group and I were itching for an escape, somewhere far from work, noise, and the same tired bars we always hit. So, we rented this lakefront house about 3 hours outside of town. The place was buried deep in North Carolina, practically off the grid. That's probably why it was so cheap. But to us, that was part of the charm. Remote, quiet, private. The perfect ingredients for a weekend of reckless partying. The crew was me, Callie, Jamie, Crystal, Rich, and Adam. We all squeezed into Adam's truck, which felt like a road trip right out of a college flashback. I was actually the one who found the Airbnb. What sold me wasn't just the price. It was that massive deck that wrapped around the entire house and looked straight out over the lake. And oh yeah, there was a hot tub. On the deck. Facing the water. You already know we were in. There was also a big fire pit set up right by the shoreline, complete with those oversized Adirondack chairs you see in vacation catalogs. Everything looked so ideal, so perfect, that we barely questioned how isolated it was. In hindsight, maybe we should have. Anyway, the host told me to grab a hidden key tucked behind the mailbox to unlock the front gate. The driveway wasn't even paved. It was all gravel and dirt, winding through a patch of woods until it finally opened up into this clearing where the house sat like something out of a lakeside postcard. Adam parked us right next to the deck and we all piled out, taking it in. First thing I did? Walk straight to the back part of the deck. The view was insane. The lake looked untouched. Serene. Calm. That kind of peace you forget exists. But of course, we were about to ruin it by blasting music and cracking open beers. After unpacking, the drinking started immediately. Beer pong, cornhole, barbecue, and a Bluetooth speaker cranked to full volume. 4 hours we were just loud, like obnoxiously loud, because we were sure there wasn't a soul around for miles. Who'd complain? It's not like there were neighbors. Plus, phone reception was barely there, which meant no distractions. No TikToks. No doom scrolling. Just us and the moment. As night started creeping in, we moved to the fire pit, beers still in hand, music still pumping. That's when we all froze. Out of nowhere, a voice cut through the darkness. Harsh. Angry. Turn that damn music down! We spun around, squinting toward the woods, and there she was. This middle-aged woman, short, stringy hair, pissed-off expression, standing just at the edge of the trees. Someone turned the music down, and the woman started laying into us. You out-of-towners always come here, trash our lake, and make noise like you own the place. She looked like she crawled out of a trailer park horror flick. I apologized, kinda just trying to smooth it over. One of the girls asked her if she lived nearby and if she could even hear the music from her house. She ignored that question. Just yelled, I can't even hear myself think. Then, she turned around, and walked right back into the woods. Like no trail. No flashlight. Just disappeared into total darkness. We all just sat there stunned for a beat, then broke out laughing. What the hell had that been? It was so random, so creepy, we had to joke about it or else we'd let it mess with the vibe. But even with the laughter, it definitely put a weird cloud over everything. Still, the drinks kept flowing, and the music slowly crept back up. Before long, we were right back where we started, just a little more cautious. That's when it got worse. A song ended and the music went silent for a second. In that gap, we heard something. A voice. Faint but unmistakable. Coming from the lake. Help! We all went quiet. Is someone out there? I yelled, stepping up to the waterline. Yes, help me! Our instincts kicked in. There was a kayak leaned up against the side of the deck, along with 2 paddles. Adam and I grabbed it and started paddling out, yelling into the darkness. Keep calling! We're coming! But the further we went, the quieter the voice became. It was like chasing an echo. We rode for 5, maybe 10 minutes into pitch-black nothingness. And then, nothing. No voice. No sound. Just us in the middle of the lake with the stars above and the distant glow of the house behind us. And then, we heard screams. Blood-curdling, high-pitched, terrified screams. From the direction of the house. Girls. Plural. Adam and I locked eyes and immediately started paddling back like our lives depended on it. The screams had already stopped by the time we reached the shore. We sprinted up the deck and into the house, yelling for the others. No answer. Every room was empty. Inside and out. Gone. Rich, Callie, Jamie, and Crystal, gone without a trace. Adam tried calling everyone, but of course, we had 0 bars. His truck was still parked there, keys inside. They hadn't left. It was like they'd vanished. We jumped back in the truck and drove up the road, hoping to find another house, someone, anyone. After about 10 minutes, we saw another driveway cutting through the woods. We followed it uphill and came to a house with the lights on. We rang the doorbell over and over. No answer. We went to the window. That's when I saw her. The woman from earlier. Standing inside, just beyond the glass, lit by a single lamp. She wasn't moving. Just standing there. Staring straight at us with the same furious expression she had earlier. We banged on the window, begged for help, but she didn't move. Didn't even blink. Just stood there watching us like we were animals in a cage. Screw that. We bolted back to the truck, now full-on panicking. Then my phone buzzed. Rich. I picked up, barely able to get a word out. He was whispering fast, panicked. He said there were 2 men, both wearing masks and holding axes, who had come out of the woods while we were gone. That's why the girls screamed. They all ran down the road and were hiding in the trees, one of them on the phone with 911. And then the call cut off. We didn't know what else to do, so we waited in the truck, engine off, just sitting there near the road, hoping the cops would show. Eventually, we saw the flashing lights. We ran out, flagged them down, and immediately led them to where our friends had last been. And there they were, coming out of the woods, waving their arms, dirty, terrified, and crying. We picked them up, loaded everyone into the truck, and followed the cops back to the Airbnb. Nothing had been taken. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. No sign of any men with axes. We told the cops everything. About the lake voice. The woman. The screams. The masked men? They said they'd send out a team to check the area and maybe search the lake, but we didn't wait around. We grabbed our bags, threw them in the truck, and got the hell out of there. Later, after a week of arguing with the host and Airbnb, we managed to get most of our money back. Not that it mattered. What we lost that weekend wasn't cash, it was peace of mind. None of us ever figured out what happened. Was the voice in the lake a distraction? Were the masked men waiting for us to leave? Was that woman part of it, or was she just another piece of something even darker? We still don't know. And honestly, I don't want to. All I know is this: I don't do remote places anymore. And I know the others won't either. That trip changed us. Forever. Memorial Day weekend, 2021. The world was finally crawling out of the shadow of COVID. People were ready to party again, like actually celebrate life for the first time in a long time. My friends and I? We were no different. Jacob, one of our closest buddies, came from money. Like real money. His family had this massive waterfront house and an even more ridiculous boat. Well, technically his dad's boat. But Jacob had access to it any time he wanted, and we definitely reaped the benefits of that friendship. The plan was to take the boat out to this big gathering happening in the bay. Word had gone around about dozens of boats anchoring up in this shallow spot, people just tying up side by side, music blaring, drinks flowing, people hopping from one boat to another. It was the perfect storm of summer vibes, sunburns, and drunken decisions. Our core group, me, Tony, Mikey, and of course Jacob, met up at his place early that day. The weather was perfect, and we loaded up the boat with coolers, towels, and more alcohol than we probably should have. Then we headed out. The party on the water was everything we'd hoped for. Boats packed tight together. Guys showing off. Girls dancing in bikinis. Everyone waist deep in the water holding drinks and vibing to whatever music was closest. It was a drunken mess, but the good kind. The kind that felt like summer had finally come back from the dead. But, as it always does, day turned into night. And that's when things started to unravel. We were the last boat left in the bay. One by one, everyone else had peeled off and disappeared toward their docks. Jacob, who'd been drinking just as hard as the rest of us, was absolutely not in shape to captain the boat back. I told him to go down to the cabin and sleep it off. So we waited. For hours. The three of us sat above deck, sobering up slowly as the sky turned from gold to black. Eventually, Jacob came back up looking a little better. Still groggy, but sober enough to steer. He started the engine and began the slow cruise back toward his canal. His house was only about 5 minutes and once we left the open bay. But as we started heading in that direction, we noticed another boat behind us. Not unusual, right? Except, this one was following way too closely. Jacob tensed up. You think that's the Bay Police? His face strained. A DUI meant his license, his dad's boat privileges, maybe worse. He knew his dad would absolutely kill him if he found out. We decided to just stay cool. Keep it steady. Don't speed. Don't swerve. Don't do anything that screams, I'm drunk and panicking. We entered the canal, which was a no-wake zone, basically, slow and quiet all the way through. The boat behind us? Still tailing us. Almost gliding now. Silent. Creeping. Jacob kept glancing over his shoulder. The closer we got to his house, the more nervous he got. By the time we reached his dock, the other boat was practically right behind us. Jacob swung around the back and lined us up to park, doing a surprisingly clean job for someone who had been 3 white claws from death earlier. And then, the boat passed us. Not police. Just 3 dudes. 3 men standing stiff on the deck of their boat, not saying a word, just staring. Jacob said it first. Who the hell are these guys? I know everyone on this canal. No one responded. The men just stood there, arms at their sides, gazes locked onto us as they slowly passed. We watched them until they disappeared behind a bend. That should have been it. Should have. Jacob was rattled, but I tried to calm him down. Maybe they're just visiting someone for the weekend. People rent places all the time. Memorial Day, remember? He nodded slowly. Yeah, could be. Still, he tied the boat with a little more urgency than usual. We all headed into the house, hoping to shake the weirdness and maybe salvage the night with one last hurrah. Jacob's parents weren't home that weekend, so we thought, why not a pool hang? Just the 4 of us. Last minute, nothing crazy. By the time we got outside with new drinks in hand, it was around 10 p.m. That's when it happened again. That same boat cruised by. Again. Slower this time. And this time? They didn't just pass. They practically paused in front of the house. All three men, same ones, staring at us. Watching. Jacob didn't say anything. None of us did. We just stood there by the pool, beer cans in hand, unsure what to do with the heavy silence. Eventually, the boat moved on. And that's where my memory cuts. I don't remember how the rest of the night went. Just blackout. Too much drinking, too much sun, too much everything. The next thing I remember is waking up in the middle of the night with the worst cotton mouth of my life. My throat was sandpaper. I could barely move my tongue. I looked around the living room and saw Tony and Mikey still passed out on the couch. I stumbled into the kitchen to get water. Didn't even bother with a glass, just drank from the faucet like a fountain. And that's when I saw him. A man. Standing in the kitchen. Wearing all black, like the most cliché robbery outfit you could imagine. Black hoodie. Black pants. Black ski mask. And he was holding a gun. I froze. He raised the gun and whispered, "Don't say a word." I nodded. My body was locked up. That cold, numb feeling washed over me, the kind where you know you could die any second. He stepped closer. "Where's the owner of the house?" I don't know," I stammered. "Upstairs, maybe." He told me to lead the way. So I did. What choice did I have? Halfway up the stairs, I realized there were two of them. Two men behind me now. Both dressed the same. Both carrying guns. When we reached the top, they told me to wake Jacob up, quietly. I went to his room, gently nudged him awake. He opened his eyes slowly, groggy, confused, until he saw them. Then he freaked, understandably. One of the men stepped forward and shoved the gun in his face. "Where's the safe?" Jacob was shaking now. Barely able to speak. But he knew what they meant. His dad had a safe in the master bedroom closet. They made him walk us all there, guns still pointed, their footsteps silent on the hardwood floor. They told Jacob to call his dad. He did. Put it on speaker. Told his dad point blank that we were being held at gunpoint and he needed the combination now. His dad gave it. No hesitation. Just fear. The men opened the safe and began loading up a black duffel bag, cash, jewelry, documents, even a few savings bonds. Stuff that clearly wasn't meant to ever leave that house. Then they were gone. They didn't peel away in a car. We didn't hear tires squeal. No engine roar. Just gone. Like shadows. We checked every camera, every angle. Nothing. Later, we posted everywhere we could, local Facebook groups, the Ring app, even local news outlets. No one recognized the men. No one had seen that boat. But we knew. Those guys followed us. They followed us all the way from the bay, tracked our every move, waited for us to get drunk, then struck when we were at our most vulnerable. It wasn't random. They picked us. Because Jacob's boat was flashy. Because the house was huge. Because we screamed, "Money," without saying a word. I don't think I've ever been more terrified in my life. One wrong move and I'm a headline. That night changed me. And Jacob? He sold the boat. Didn't even try to fight it. Just listed it and walked away. Because when you realize how quickly comfort can turn into horror, you stop gambling with it. You stop taking chances. You lock the doors. And you never, ever assume you're safe. Not even in your own home. You know how every group of friends has that one guy who's obsessed with off-the-grid experiences? In our crew, that was Corey. Big-time nature buff, always talking about how the best parts of life were in the woods and not on a screen. So when Memorial Day weekend rolled around, he pitched something different. No phones. No cabins. Just tents, fishing poles, and a cooler full of beer. The plan? A remote campground way up in northern Michigan. Somewhere near the edge of the Huron National Forest. We were all in our mid-20s, still dumb enough to say yes to anything adventurous, so we agreed. It ended up being 5 of us, me, Corey, Dan, Alyssa, and Marcus. Corey found this obscure little place called Trillium Lake Campgrounds, not even on Google Maps. He found it on a backwoods forum that only hardcore hikers seemed to use. The post said it was beautiful, private, and eerie in the best kind of way. We should have taken that last part more seriously. Anyway, we packed light. Sleeping bags, tents, a couple of axes for firewood, and just enough food to last the weekend. Dan and I carpooled. Alyssa drove separately. Marcus rode with Corey. The trip up there took nearly 7 hours, with the last leg down a pothole-riddled dirt road that went on forever. No signs. No cell service. Just forest. Endless, thick, whispering forest. We pulled up to the campground late Friday afternoon. The entrance wasn't marked with a proper sign, just a rusted metal stake with a carved wood plank that said, Trillium. The place was deserted. No other cars. No rangers. No office. Just a single board with some faded trail maps and a suggestion box covered in cobwebs. Corey was ecstatic. This is perfect. Me? I had a pit in my stomach. We picked a campsite close to the water, if you could call it that. It was more like a stagnant pond than a lake. Still, the trees framed it beautifully, and we set up camp, lit a fire, cracked open beers, and tried to shake the unease. That night was mostly normal. We drank, told stories, laughed, and passed out around midnight. But at some point deep into the night, something woke me up. Not a sound exactly. A pressure. The air had changed. It was cold. Damp. Still. So still, I swear even the bugs had gone silent. I sat up in my tent and listened. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate, on the gravel path just outside our camp. I peeked out of the tent, expecting to see one of my friends stumbling to pee in the woods. But no one was there. Just fog. Thick, rolling fog that hadn't been there hours before. I whispered into the dark. Hello? Nothing. But the footsteps started again. Only this time, they weren't outside the camp. They were circling us. That's when I saw it. A shape. Just past the fire pit. Motionless. Barely visible in the mist. It looked like a man, tall, gaunt, and somehow wrong. His proportions didn't line up. Like his arms were too long. His neck too stiff. His body too still. I blinked, and he was gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was a deer, or a dream, or the whiskey I'd had. But then Dan said something over breakfast that stopped me cold. Hey, did anyone else hear that guy walking around last night? Everyone froze. Alyssa nodded slowly. I thought it was one of you guys. Corey just smiled. Probably another camper messing with us. No one else is here, I reminded him. He shrugged it off. But the mood changed. We spent the day fishing and exploring the trails. But it felt off. Every time we left the camp, we felt like we were being watched. I caught myself spinning around more than once, certain someone was behind us. Around dusk, we decided to make s'mores and chill out again. The fire was going strong. The beer was flowing. But none of us could shake that weird tension in the air. That's when Alyssa pointed to the water. Guys! We turned. Out across the lake, if you could even see across it, there were lights. Dim, flickering lights, like lanterns swaying in the wind. But they weren't steady. They blinked in and out of view, appearing and disappearing like fireflies. We counted at least 4. Must be other campers, Corey said, though his voice wasn't confident anymore. Dan shook his head. There's no other cars here, man. We watched the lights for maybe 5 minutes, until one of them started moving toward us. It wasn't fast. Just a slow glide across the lake. No sound. Just that creeping, unnatural movement. Into the tents, I whispered. We doused the fire. We all climbed into our tents like kids hiding from monsters. And then came the voices. Not talking. Not yelling. Just whispers. All around us. They didn't make sense. It wasn't English. It wasn't any language. Just soft, layered murmurs like dozens of people whispering gibberish into the air. My skin was crawling. Every hair on my body stood straight up. Then everything stopped. The next thing I remember, it was morning. I don't remember falling asleep. None of us did. We all woke up at the same time, stepped out of our tents, and just stared at each other in silence. The fire pit? Still cold. Like it had been that way for days. Our footprints around the campsite? Gone. Like we'd never been there. Alyssa went to grab her phone to check the time. No service, of course, but that wasn't the problem. The date. It was Wednesday. Not Sunday. We had lost 3 days. 3 full days. We packed up without a word. Didn't even eat. Just tore everything down and booked it out of there. When we finally got back to civilization, real roads, gas stations, cell reception, things got even weirder. None of us had texts, calls, emails, nothing. It was like the world had been paused while we were gone. Dan tried to report what happened to a local ranger office, but when he mentioned Trillium Lake campgrounds, the ranger just looked confused. That place hasn't been maintained since the 90s, he said. It was shut down after a hiker went missing up there. Never reopened. But it was marked, we argued. The posts, the trail map, the fire pits. The ranger cut us off. There's no post. And there's no lake. Just swamp. He showed us the current maps. No Trillium Lake. No campground. Just a grayed out area labeled restricted forest land. We still talk about it sometimes. But only when we're drunk. Because none of us can explain what really happened. We lost time. We saw things. Heard things. And we were watched. Not by animals. Not by people. By something else. Whatever it was, it doesn't live on maps. It lives out there. In the fog. Waiting. There's this small town in Nebraska called Carrington Bluff. You won't find it on many maps. Just a blip on the highway, somewhere between cornfields and dust. But for generations, Carrington Bluff had one thing going for it, its annual Memorial Day parade. Old school. Flags on every porch. Marching bands made up of local high school kids. Veterans walking with pride. Fire trucks honking. Little kids chasing candy tossed from classic convertibles. The whole town showed up every year. And even if it was small, it was theirs. At least, it used to be. See, I used to live there. Born and raised. Moved away about 10 years ago. City life swallowed me whole, but I never missed the parade. It was tradition. Every year, I drive back, stay at my aunt's place, and soak in a little nostalgia. But in 2019, something changed. It started with a flyer. It showed up in my mailbox in Chicago, addressed by hand. No return address. Just a red, white, and blue card that said, "You're invited to the 115th Annual Carrington Bluff Memorial Day Parade. One day only. May 27th, 10 a.m. sharp. Come see what you've forgotten." That last line felt weird. Like it was accusing me of something. Still, I figured it was just the town committee trying to add some flair. So I packed a bag and drove out like always. But when I got there, something felt off right away. Carrington Bluff looked different. Not just older, wrong. The gas station where I used to hang out? Gone. Replaced by an old brick building I didn't recognize. The grocery store? Boarded up. The streets looked almost too clean, like they'd been scrubbed for a photo op. No cars. No noise. Just silence and empty sidewalks. My aunt wasn't home either. Her house was locked up tight. Curtains drawn. Mail piled up. I tried calling her, but my phone had no signal. Not just weak, dead. Like the entire town was a black hole. I figured maybe she went out for the morning, so I walked downtown. And that's when I heard it. Music. Faint at first. A slow, mournful marching band tune. I followed it to Main Street. And there it was. The parade. Just like I remembered, and somehow, not at all. There were people lining the sidewalks. Men in old-fashioned military uniforms. Women in vintage dresses. Kids with slicked hair and bonnets. Everything looked like it was pulled straight out of the 1940s. I stood there frozen. Watching. A man passed by on a float that looked like a World War II tank. He made eye contact with me and saluted. I nodded back instinctively. Then I saw someone else. My grandfather. But that wasn't possible. He died when I was 13. Yet there he was. Younger. Dressed in his army gear. Marching past me with a proud smile. I took a step forward. Grandpa? He didn't flinch. Just kept walking. I tried to follow, but a woman in a red dress grabbed my arm. Her grip was cold and firm. Don't step into the street, she said. Her voice was flat. Mechanical. I looked at her. Her eyes were glassy. Vacant. Like she was running on autopilot. The parade continued. Float after float. Veteran after veteran. All of them looked familiar. Too familiar. Faces I hadn't seen in years. Decades. I swear I saw my old middle school teacher. The mailman from my childhood. Even my childhood dog trotted alongside a little boy I didn't recognize. It was like the past had come back to life. Then I saw my aunt. Sitting in a folding chair on the curb. Staring straight ahead. Not blinking. I called out to her. She didn't react. I ran to her, waved my hand in front of her face, snapped my fingers, nothing. Her skin was ice cold. Her pupils weren't dilated. But she was breathing. Barely. That's when I realized none of them were blinking. No one in the crowd. Every face was slack. Emotionless. Like mannequins. Except for me. I looked around, heart racing. Then the music stopped. All at once. Every head turned toward me. Hundreds of eyes. Empty. Unblinking. Staring. I backed up slowly. And the woman in the red dress whispered, "You weren't invited." I ran. I didn't look back. I just ran through the town, down the street, past the old school, the diner, the church. Everything looked frozen in time. When I finally got to my car, it wouldn't start. Dead. No power. No lights. Nothing. I got out and just kept running. Through cornfields. Along the old highway. Miles. Hours. I don't even know how long. Eventually, I saw headlights. A trucker picked me up, stared at me like I was insane, but didn't ask questions. I told him about Carrington Bluff. He'd never heard of it. I checked my phone again. Full signal. Full battery. I searched Google Maps. No Carrington Bluff. I searched news archives. No parade. No town. No nothing. It was like it had never existed. But I know it did. Because I still have the flyer. It's faded now, and the ink has bled in some places. But that last line? It's still clear. Come see what you've forgotten. And I do remember. But I wish I didn't. My uncle owns this quiet little RV park near Patoka Lake in southern Indiana. It's nothing fancy, just a gravel lot carved out of the woods, ringed by fire pits, and wired up with power and water hookups. People come and go, usually retirees or families with kids, especially during long weekends. Memorial Day is always the busiest time of the year. In 2022, I decided to help him out over the holiday weekend. He was getting older, and the campground was at full capacity. Plus, I figured it would be a laid-back few days in the woods, take payments, hand out firewood, maybe sneak a few beers at night. But that weekend? It changed how I feel about the woods. Forever. Friday started normal. Families started rolling in, backing up their trailers, kids jumping out with Esmores kits. There were dogs barking, country music playing, the faint scent of bug spray and charcoal. I was working the check-in booth when this old, dented silver RV pulled up, an old Class C, probably late 80s. The kind with a faded stripe and cracked windows. Out stepped this man. Tall. Thin. Pale. His hair was too black, like it had been dyed but pearly, and his face looked wrong. Not scarred. Not deformed. Just uncanny. Like a wax figure that had been left out in the sun a little too long. He didn't say much. Just slid a $100 bill under the glass and whispered, "Lot 6. I looked down at the map. Lot 6 was still open, but it wasn't an ideal spot. It was isolated, wedged at the far edge of the campground, back near the tree line. Most people preferred to be closer to the bathrooms and the general store, but hey, some folks like their privacy. I gave him the slip and pointed. "Straight back, left turn, can't miss it." He nodded once. No smile. No pleasantries. I watched him drive off and felt this weird chill crawl up my spine. The weekend went on. Campfires. Laughter. Someone played guitar by the lake. Kids screamed in the background, splashing in the shallows. You wouldn't know the world was spinning off its axis. But something kept drawing my eyes to Lot 6. I never saw the man leave his RV. Not once. No lights on at night. No fire pit burning. No chairs outside. Just that rusted hunk of metal sitting in the trees like it was trying to disappear. By Sunday night I got curious. Really curious. Maybe too curious. I told my uncle I was going on a beer run and made a detour. Walked out past the last row of campers and down the gravel trail that led to the edge of the woods. Lot 6 was dead silent. The only sound was the occasional creak of metal from inside the RV, like something shifting, or something breathing. I stood about 10 feet away, staring. Then I saw it. The curtain in the front window moved, just a crack. Enough for me to see part of a face staring out. But not the man. Not exactly. It was someone, or something, else. The skin was smooth and tight, like plastic. The eyes were huge and glassy, too far apart. And it was smiling. Smiling like it had just discovered how to do it. I froze. It didn't blink. Didn't move. Just stared. I backed away slowly, trying not to break into a run. As soon as I hit the tree line, I bolted. I didn't tell anyone that night. Not my uncle. Not the guests. I figured maybe I was overtired. Hallucinating. But I didn't sleep. And then came Memorial Day morning. Lot 6 was gone. Not just the man, the RV, vanished. No tracks. No tire marks. The gravel looked untouched. Even the grass beneath where it had been was somehow undisturbed, like it hadn't been flattened by thousands of pounds of metal. But that's not what got me. It was what was left behind. In the middle of the lot was a small pile of bones. Animal bones, I think. Clean. White. Arranged in a perfect spiral. On top sat a black and white photo of the campground. Only, it was old. Really old. Like 1950s era. The RVs in the photo were all vintage. The trees were shorter. The lot layout was the same, but different. And standing at the edge of the photo, next to where Lot 6 would have been, was the man. Same waxy face. Same dead stare. He hadn't aged a day. I took the photo to my uncle. He stared at it in silence for a long time. Then he locked the office door and poured us both a whiskey. Lot 6, he said. We don't talk about that one. What do you mean? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Every few years someone shows up. Always quiet. Always takes that spot. And then they vanish. Always leaves something behind. We used to call the police. They stopped coming. Told us not to call again. He downed his glass. Lot SIXS not part of the campground anymore. Wasn't supposed to rent it out. But the map. I updated the map 5 years ago. He cut me off. Took it off. I pulled up the copy I'd used. The one in the booth. Lot 6 was there. Plain as day. He went pale. Said nothing. We burned the photo that night. Tossed the bones into the lake. But I still think about that face in the window. That thing that smiled like it didn't belong. And every Memorial Day I wonder, is it back? And what's it learning? I was on a solo road trip last year over Memorial Day weekend. I'd hit this weird crossroads in my life, career stalling, relationship falling apart, that creeping itch to get away from everything. So I did what any emotionally fried millennial would do, filled my tank, downloaded some podcasts, and took off without a plan. I wanted empty roads. Long stretches of desert. That classic American stillness where you can hear your thoughts echo. So I headed west, deep into Texas. Somewhere past Midland, I turned off the main drag and got on Highway 18. No traffic. No lights. Just 2 narrow lanes cutting through endless plains and dying heat. Around 5 p.m., I saw a sign. Memorial Day Celebration, May 27th, 6 p.m., Welcome to Dry Creek. Population, 213. Perfect. I figured it'd be a dinky roadside town with some barbecue, maybe a parade, or a small fireworks show. Just enough humanity to keep things interesting. I pulled into Dry Creek about 20 minutes later. It looked exactly how you'd picture a forgotten West Texas town. One gas station. One diner. A few sad brick buildings baking in the sun. And a wide, dusty main street with faded American flags fluttering from every lamppost. Except, no people. No cars. No music. No kids playing. Nothing. But the flags were new. Bright. Crisp. Almost like they'd just been hung up that morning. I got out of my car and looked around. The silence was immediate. Suffocating. I walked down the main street, peeking into storefronts. Everything looked normal, just empty. Plates on diner tables. A radio still playing static in a barbershop. A coffee pot still warm in a bakery. It felt like everyone had vanished at once. That's when I noticed the smell. Faint at first. Then stronger. Like sulfur, and something metallic. I followed it to the town square, where they had a small memorial, a stone slab with a list of names carved into it. Fallen soldiers from the town. Decades worth. Flowers laid neatly at its base. Behind it, I saw a banner strung across the old town hall. We remember the forgotten. There were chairs arranged in rows facing the steps, like they'd set up for a service. But no one was there. Not even folding chairs tipped over by wind. Just perfect alignment. And on each chair? A photo. Portrait style. Black and white. Faces I didn't recognize. Uniforms of all eras. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, even some modern fatigues. I walked closer. The faces weren't smiling. They weren't even looking at the camera. Every single one had their eyes turned, like they were looking just past whoever took the photo. And their expressions? Blank. Not serious. Not sad. Just vacant. I stepped back. Something felt wrong. Like the air had gotten heavier. Then I heard the footsteps. Marching. I turned. Coming up the street were figures. Dozens of them. Men in uniforms. Walking in perfect formation. But they weren't right. Their skin was pale. Ashy. Some wore helmets, others had bandages around their heads. One dragged a leg behind him, a torn boot flopping loosely with each step. They didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just marched. Straight toward me. I backed up onto the steps of the town hall, heart hammering. They passed through the square in total silence. No breathing. No scuffing. Just the mechanical rhythm of dead boots on asphalt. One by one, they filed into the seats. Every single one sat in front of the photo that matched their face. I swear to you, one of the pictures lifted slightly as if by wind, and the man sitting there reached up and adjusted it. I turned to run. The town behind me was gone. Literally. The gas station? The diner? My car? Vanished. Replaced by open desert. The only thing left was the square, the chairs, and the marching dead. I ran into the town hall. Inside was dark. Dust-covered. Abandoned. Except for the walls. Covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Each labeled with a name, a rank, and a date of death. Some of the photos were of men in combat gear. Others were blurry. Old. But one of them was me. Not a future version. Not some ghostly Photoshop job. It was me. Now. Same shirt I was wearing. Same road trip scruff. Same exhausted eyes. Below it. Private First Class, Kia, May 27, 2023. I staggered back, breathing hard. Then the bell rang. Like an old church bell echoing through the square. I stepped outside. All the soldiers were standing now, facing the town hall. Waiting. One pointed at me. The others followed. I ran. I don't know how far. Just ran until the heat blurred everything and my legs gave out. I woke up on the side of a road. Highway 18. My car was parked beside me. No town behind me. Just sagebrush and sky. My phone had full signal again. No missed calls. No alerts. The last photo I took on the trip? A blurry image of a stone memorial with no names on it. I never found Dry Creek again. Doesn't show up on maps. No flyers. No signs. Just gone. But every Memorial Day, I get a postcard in the mail. No return address. No message. Just a photo. Of a chair. With my name taped to the back. I hadn't been back to Willow's End since I was a teenager. It's a tiny little village tucked into the Catskills. Population maybe 600 if you count the stray dogs. My dad grew up there, and we used to spend summers visiting my grandparents until they passed. After that, the place just faded out of our lives. Until last year. I got a Facebook message from a woman named Greta. She said she was on the town's Heritage Committee, and they were holding a 100-year Memorial Day celebration, barbecue, fireworks, the works. And since my grandparents had been long-time residents, they were inviting extended family back for a reunion of sorts. It was nostalgic bait, and I took it. I called my cousin Rachel, who also hadn't been in years. We decided to make a weekend of it. Drive up Friday night, stay at the old inn, soak in some small-town Americana for a few days. When we rolled into Willow's End, it was exactly how I remembered it. Like time had slowed down. Same cracked sidewalks. Same 3 shops. Same white church with the rusted bell. But the strangest part? It looked spotless. Not just neat, perfect. Lush flower beds, fresh paint, American flags hanging pristine from every porch. It was like someone had set the whole town up for a photo shoot. Even the people looked staged. Everyone was smiling. Everyone waved. But none of it reached their eyes. We checked into the inn and got our keys from a man named Harold, big guy, red suspenders, permanent grin. He told us to enjoy the barbecue at Willow's End tomorrow evening. Said it was the biggest one yet. You'll never forget it, he added, then winked. Something about that wink made my skin crawl. Saturday was uneventful. We walked around, visited the old cemetery where my grandparents were buried, took some photos. Rachel pointed out how there were no kids in town. No teens. Just adults, middle-aged and older. And every single one of them dressed like they'd stepped out of a 1950s Sears catalog. We shrugged it off. Until the barbecue. It was held in the field behind the church. Long picnic tables, red checkered cloths, lanterns strung through the trees. A brass band played old patriotic tunes. Burgers and hot dogs grilled on open flames. Giant metal tubs filled with soda bottles on ice. The whole town showed up. Every resident we'd seen during the day was there, and they were waiting for us. Literally waiting. We walked in, and the band stopped playing. All heads turned. Then applause. It was like we were guests of honor. Greta, the woman who messaged me, appeared and hugged us both. She had that same two-eyed smile as everyone else. Her eyes were pale blue, almost white in the light. "So glad you came back," she said, leading us to the center table. Everyone watched us eat. No one else touched their food until we had our first bites. We sat stiffly, chewing slowly. Something tasted off. Not spoiled, exactly. Just wrong. Like the meat had been overprocessed. Too smooth. Too pink. I pushed mine away after a few bites. Rachel did too. That's when the questions started. One by one, residents began approaching us, asking about our lives. But they didn't ask normal things. They asked things like, "Do you still have dreams about the fire? Did your mother ever forgive herself? Do you remember the girl in the well?" Every question chilled me. Because they weren't general. They were personal. Deeply personal. Things no one outside my family could possibly know. Rachel was trembling. She whispered, "I want to leave." We stood up. That's when Greta placed her hand firmly on my shoulder. "We'd hoped you'd stay the night," she said, still smiling. Her grip was like iron. "Lots of people come back. But not everyone returns." I asked what that meant. She just leaned in close and whispered, "You died here once. You just don't remember yet." I shoved her hand off, grabbed Rachel, and we sprinted back through the field. But the town had changed. The roads were different. Houses were in the wrong places. The sky looked like it was stuck at sunset, even though it was after 9. And there were no cars. Ours was gone. We ran to the church, hoping to hide. But inside was pitch black, and the air was cold, unnaturally cold. We locked ourselves in a supply closet and stayed there the entire night, holding our breath every time footsteps passed. When we finally opened the door, it was morning. Bright. Peaceful. The town was quiet again. Our car was parked in front of the inn. We didn't speak a word. Just got in and drove. We made it back to the highway in under 15 minutes, though I swear the town had been farther away. Later, I checked the Heritage Committee online. There was no record of it. No Facebook page. No Greta. No event. I even tried calling the inn. Disconnected. But the strangest part? I looked at the photos on my phone. The town was there. The church. The tables. The people smiling. Except, in every photo, Rachel and I weren't in them. Not even in the group photo Greta made us pose for. It's just empty space where we should have been. Like we didn't belong. Or like we never left. I was 17 the summer my cousin Tyler convinced me to join him for a weekend volunteer gig at this old youth camp out in western Pennsylvania, Camp Grayson. His church youth group was hosting a Memorial Day retreat for underprivileged kids, and they needed extra hands to help run games, set up tents, and chaperone overnight. Tyler promised free food, cute counselors, and a killer bonfire. I didn't need much more than that to say yes. Camp Grayson had been around forever. Like, seriously forever. It was built back in the 1920s as a church-run summer camp. Over the years, it changed hands a few times, got rebranded, shut down, reopened. You know how it goes. But what always stuck around was its legend, the ghost stories. Every camp has them, but Grayson's were darker. They talked about a kid who died there decades ago. Burned to death during a campfire gone wrong. His name was Sam. Supposedly, the counselors covered it up. Said he ran away? But some say he never really left. They called him the Burning Boy. Anyway, I wasn't there for ghost stories. I was just looking for a weekend away from my parents. We got to camp Friday afternoon. Bunks were musty, food was basic, and the whole place had that vibe like it hadn't been updated since dial-up internet. But it had its charm: rolling hills, dense woods, and this massive fire pit in the center of the grounds surrounded by wooden benches. That first night, everything went fine. The kids were excited. Tyler was flirting with some girl from the church group, and I just chilled, occasionally helping corral kids for games. The bonfire was lit just after sunset, and we all gathered around for the usual mores and stories. That's when one of the senior counselors, an older guy named Wayne, started telling the legend of Sam. He laid it on thick. Talked about how Sam was a quiet kid. Kind, but bullied. How on Memorial Day weekend in the late 60s, some of the other boys played a prank, locked him in the supply shed near the fire pit and lit the surrounding brush as a joke. It got out of control. By the time they put it out, the shed was engulfed. They found his shoes. That was it. Wayne ended the story dramatically. And every Memorial Day, if the fire's lit too hot, Sam comes back, looking for someone to trade places. The kids screamed. The counselors laughed. Everyone moved on. But later that night, things got strange. I was assigned to patrol the grounds between midnight and 2 a.m., basically just make sure no kids were sneaking out or doing anything dumb. I was walking past the fire pit, which was now just embers, when I noticed something. There was a kid sitting on one of the benches. Alone. Staring into the coals. I walked over, thinking maybe one of the campers had snuck out. I called out, "Hey, buddy, you alright?" No answer. I got closer. He looked maybe 12 or 13. Pale skin. Hair slicked to his forehead like he'd been sweating. He was wearing old clothes, like really old. Camp Grayson t-shirt that looked sun-bleached and cracked, shorts that were too short to be modern. "Are you lost?" I asked, softer now. He turned his head slowly. His face was wrong. Not mangled. Not gory. Just warped. like it had melted and then tried to fix itself. The eyes were hollow. Not sockets, just black, flickering voids. And then he smiled. Not like a kid. Not playful. Like someone who'd waited a long, long time for something. I stepped back, heart thudding, and he stood up. As he rose, the embers in the pit flared up. Bright. Hot. Like someone had poured gasoline on them. I turned and bolted. Didn't stop until I hit the dining hall. Tyler found me 10 minutes later, crouched behind the snack table, hyperventilating. I told him everything. He laughed. Until we went back to the fire pit. And found footprints. Burned into the dirt. Barefoot. Child-sized. Leading from the bench into the woods. We followed them for maybe 50 yards before they stopped. But there, at the base of a tree, we found something else. An old, rusted nameplate. Half buried in moss. It read, Samuel Ward, Bunk 3, 1967. Tyler stopped joking after that. The next day, things got worse. One of the campers went missing. A quiet boy named Caleb. Sweet kid. Always stayed close to the counselors. Gone. Vanished after breakfast. We searched the entire camp. Trails. Bunks. Lake. Nothing. The police came. Helicopters. Dogs. They called it a runaway, but we knew better. That night, the bonfire was cancelled. The kids were sent to their bunks early. But I couldn't sleep. Around midnight, I went to the fire pit. No fire. But something had been burned there. The ashes were fresh. And sitting in the center of the bench where I'd seen the boy the night before, was Caleb's shoe. Just one. Melted. I left the next morning. Didn't wait for the goodbye prayers or the group photo. I don't know what Camp Grayson is. Maybe it's cursed. Maybe Sam was real. Or maybe the guilt of what happened in 1967 created something worse, something that still needs fuel. Every Memorial Day, another kid vanishes. The town says they ran away? Or got lost. But if you go back and dig deep enough, you'll find the same story. Year after year. Always a quiet kid. Always around the fire. And always a shoe left behind. I don't talk much about what happened at Fort Rand. Mostly because it sounds fake. Like some low-budget horror movie cooked up by a couple of stoners who watched too many conspiracy docs. But I was there. I saw it. And I barely made it out. It was Memorial Day weekend, 2020. My buddy Isaac and I were part of this urbex group, Urban Explorers, the people who break into abandoned hospitals and film creepy TikToks. Most of the time, it's all rust and graffiti and pigeon poop. But Fort Rand? That was different. The place used to be a full-blown military base, built in the 40s and decommissioned sometime in the early 2000s. Rumors swirled online about experimental tech, underground bunkers, chemical testing, the usual Black Ops mystery flavor. But what caught our eye was a blurry photo posted to Reddit. It showed the inside of Block B, one of the housing units on the base. The photo looked normal, except for the wall. Scrawled across it in what looked like ash were the words, "They never left." Naturally, we were hooked. We gathered a crew of 4, me, Isaac, our cameraman Julian, and this girl named Shay, who was new but fearless. We planned to camp overnight in one of the buildings, film a walk-through, and maybe stream a bit if we had signal. We arrived late Friday afternoon. The base was tucked behind a chain-link fence, overgrown with weeds, rusted signs dangling in the wind. We parked a mile out and hiked in with our gear. Block B stood tall near the edge of the complex. 4 stories of crumbling military housing. Windows busted, balconies sagging, vines crawling up its sides like fingers. We picked it immediately. And that was our first mistake. The inside smelled like mildew and wet stone. Paint peeled off the walls in long strips. We found our way up to the third floor, picked a room with a mostly intact ceiling, and set up camp. That night, we started filming. Isaac did his usual intro, creepy music, hushed voice, shaky camera pans. We explored the halls, finding the usual stuff, broken toilets, old furniture, graffiti. But then Shay found the door. It was at the end of the main hallway, just past the collapsed section of ceiling. A thick steel door with a keypad. No markings. Just a strange, discolored smear down the center like something had been dragged across it. We figured it led to maintenance or storage. Maybe a laundry chute. But then Julian noticed something odd. The keypad? Still had power. The tiny screen glowed faint green. Someone, or something, was still supplying electricity to it. Isaac, of course, had to try it. He entered. 0000. Nothing. 1234. Still locked. Then he tried the date we found online. The day Fort Rand was shut down, May 26, 2002. The light blinked. A click echoed through the hallway. The door creaked open. Inside was a staircase. Leading down. Pitch black. No handrails. Just concrete steps disappearing into nothing. We looked at each other. Julian was already pulling out his flashlight. If there's ever gonna be a million-view video, it's down there. And like idiots, we followed. The air got colder with every step. Not like outdoor cold, like freezer cold. And the smell, it changed. No longer mildew. It was coppery. Metallic. Like old blood. The stairs ended in a tunnel. The walls were smooth. Newer. Cleaner than the building above. Like this part had been maintained longer. We found a series of rooms, small, windowless, lined with old hospital beds and restraints. One room had claw marks on the inside of the door. Deep ones. Another room had a giant observation mirror, broken, shattered from the inside. We were officially spooked. Then the lights came on. One by one. Buzzing fluorescents flickering overhead. We hadn't touched anything. We turned to leave. The staircase was gone. Not blocked. Not collapsed. Gone. Just smooth concrete wall where it had been. Julian dropped his camera. We all screamed. Then we heard the humming. Low. Rhythmic. Like an engine warming up. Or breathing. From down the corridor came a sound I still can't describe. Wet. Guttural. Like something dragging itself along tile. She grabbed Julian's hand and bolted. Isaac and I followed. We found ourselves in a large chamber, circular, with one giant glass window on one side. Inside the glass? Rows of tanks. And floating inside each tank? People. Or things that used to be people. Bodies suspended in green fluid, twitching, mouths open in silent screams. Some were missing limbs. Some had their faces erased, just smooth skin. One of them opened its eyes. And looked at us. That's when the alarm started. Blinding red lights. A voice over a speaker. Specimen breach. Containment failure. We lost it. Ran down hallway after hallway, turning blind corners, screaming for help. And then, miraculously, we found the stairs again. Just standing there like it had always been. We didn't ask questions. We ran. Up the stairs. Through the door. Out of Block B. We didn't stop running until we hit the car. We peeled out, gravel spraying behind us. When we finally stopped, hours later, none of us spoke for a long time. Julian's footage? Gone. The entire SD card blank. She deleted every photo from her phone. She said the faces in the background were changing. Isaac quit Urbex altogether. But me? I had to know. I tried to look up records, FOIA requests, local archives. Nothing. No maps of an underground facility. No mention of Block B even having a basement. But last week, on Memorial Day, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a single item. A photo. Of that hallway. Tanks full of bodies. One of them had my face. There's a long stretch of road that cuts through nothing but wheat fields in eastern Oregon. I used to drive it every Memorial Day when I visited my grandma's old property out in Prairie Hill. She passed in 2017, but I kept the tradition going, making the trip alone, just to feel close to her again. In 2023, I left Portland early that Saturday morning. Took the scenic route. Windows down. Coffee in hand. Miles of empty highway and golden fields waving under a bright blue sky. It felt like peace. Until I reached the windbreak. If you don't know what that is, it's a row of tall trees, usually pines or firs, planted to block wind from flattening the crops. Out there, they can stretch for miles like dark walls on either side of the road. The one I'm talking about begins just past mile marker 212. I've driven past it dozens of times. Never thought twice. But last year, something was different. It was around 3 p.m. when I passed it. I glanced out the window and noticed someone standing at the edge of the trees. Not uncommon. Sometimes farmers or hikers cut through. But this person? They were standing completely still. Facing the road. Wearing something long, like an old duster coat. No hat. No movement. Just staring. As I passed, I swear their head turned slightly, tracking me. I laughed it off. Probably a scarecrow. Maybe some eccentric landowner. But 10 minutes later, I looked in the rearview mirror. They were still there. Still visible. And the windbreak had ended miles ago. That should have been impossible. I shook it off, drove another 20 minutes, and pulled into a small roadside rest stop to stretch my legs and refill my water bottle. As I stood by the vending machines, I glanced across the highway. There, at the edge of another windbreak, was the same figure. Standing exactly the same way. This time, closer. I didn't wait around. I got back in the car and floored it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Sleep deprived. Maybe it was just a farmer who happened to take a shortcut. But I started noticing something else. Every time the wind blew through the fields, the crops moved like waves. But not near the figure. Wherever they were standing, the wheat didn't move. It just stood still. Like the air refused to touch it. I reached Prairie Hill around sunset. Grandma's house was still there, though most of it had started to rot and peel. I parked, unlocked the old screen door, and went inside. Everything was still in its place. Dusty, but familiar. I made a sandwich, drank some water, and decided to walk out to the tree line behind the house. She used to tell me that's where the good spirits watched over the land. As a kid, it scared me. As an adult, I found it kind of comforting. Until I saw him again. At the edge of the windbreak. Closer now. I froze. His face was still hidden, cast in shadow, but the way he stood, there was something ancient about it. Like the earth had grown him there. Like he belonged to the dirt. I called out. "Can I help you?" No answer. The wheat around him was stone still. Even though I could feel the wind pushing at my back. I went inside, locked the door, and sat in the living room with every light on. That's when the knocking started. Not at the front door. Not at the back. At the windows. One by one. 3 taps. Then silence. 3 taps again, on another window. Always in sequence. Always moving clockwise around the house. I grabbed my phone. No service. Of course. I opened the drawer where Grandma used to keep the old .22 rifle. It was still there. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat on the couch, clutching the rifle, listening to the tapping that went on until almost dawn. And then, it stopped. Just before the sun broke over the fields. I walked outside, squinting against the light. The wheat moved again. All of it. The way it should. And there was no one at the edge of the trees. I stayed one more day, trying to convince myself it had all been a hallucination. Stress. Lack of sleep. That night was quiet. But when I woke up Monday morning, Memorial Day, I noticed something strange on the porch. A bundle of wheat, tied with twine, sitting neatly by the door. And next to it? A small pin. An old military insignia. World War II era? Rusted. Weathered. The kind you'd only find in a museum, or buried with a soldier. I picked it up. It was warm. I drove home that afternoon. Didn't stop. Didn't eat. Barely blinked. When I got back to Portland, I tried looking up the property history again. Found a scanned article from 1951. Apparently, a soldier had returned from the war and built the Prairie Hill house. Lived there for a year. Then disappeared. They never found his body. Just a coat. And his hat. Standing neatly on the porch. Like he'd gone for a walk and never came back. But what caught me? The photo. Black and white. Faded. But there he was. Standing at the edge of the wheat. Same coat. Same stance. Same windless silence. And the caption read, Memorial Day, 1950, last known photo of Private Leland Gray. I don't know what I saw. I don't know if it was a ghost, or a memory, or something the land remembers and replays. But I do know this. Every year, I get a package in the mail. No return address. Just a single bundle of wheat. Tied in twine. Still warm. I was driving down to Charleston last Memorial Day weekend to meet up with my girlfriend's family. It was supposed to be this big, all-American cookout, hot dogs, cornhole, her dad telling war stories over cold beer. Honestly, I was nervous. Her family had never met me before, and I figured showing up early and helpful would make a good first impression. So I took a back route through the Lowcountry, beautiful but easy to get lost in. Marshes on both sides of the road, hanging moss brushing the windshield, and tiny towns that looked like they hadn't changed since 1965. Somewhere around Beaufort County, my GPS cut out. No signal. No map. Just that spinning wheel of death. I wasn't too worried at first. I'd downloaded an offline map. But the roads down there are winding and unmarked, and after taking a wrong turn, or maybe 3, I realized I was totally off course. That's when I saw the sign. Welcome to Merrow's Rest, Memorial Day celebration, 5 p.m. There were little American flags lining the dirt road that led into town. Red, white, and blue streamers tied between trees. A classic fire truck parked under a massive oak. It looked perfect. Like a Norman Rockwell painting. I figured I'd found my way back to civilization. Maybe someone could give me directions or let me borrow a charger. I pulled into what looked like the town square, more like a clearing with a fountain and a few buildings, a general store, a chapel, and a diner. The air smelled like grilled meat and honeysuckle. And people were gathering. Dozens of them. All wearing crisp, vintage-style clothing. The women in sundresses. The men in press shirts and suspenders. Kids playing with toy planes and sparklers. It felt like I'd stepped into the past. I parked and got out. "Hi there!" a man called out. He was in his late 40s, square jaw, slicked back hair. "You here for the celebration?" I hesitated. Kinda got lost. Looking for the road to Charleston. Well, you're welcome to stay for the show. Parade starts soon. Music. Barbecue. Cold drinks. I smiled. That actually sounds great. He clapped me on the back. We always honor our heroes here. Every year. Rain or shine. I thanked him and wandered into the crowd. Something felt a little strange, though. Everyone kept smiling, but no one blinked. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but once you notice it, you can't unsee it. These people just stared at you, big, wide, empty grins. Eyes glossy. Frozen in the moment. The parade started. An old marching band came through first. Drums pounding. Brass gleaming. Then a group of kids with little flags. And then, the soldiers. Not actors. Not costumes. Soldiers. Real uniforms from every era. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, even some from the Gulf War. They walked stiffly. Too stiffly. And their skin was wrong. Ashen. Tinted gray. Like statues. No one clapped. No one cheered. The crowd just watched in reverent silence. I turned to a woman beside me. Is this like a reenactment? She didn't answer. She just kept smiling. The soldiers passed. Some limping. One dragging a foot. A few carried photos of themselves. And then I saw it. A casket. Draped in a flag. 6 of the soldiers were carrying it. They stopped in front of the fountain. The man who'd welcomed me stepped forward with a microphone. He spoke in a booming voice. We welcome another tomorrow's rest. For service beyond the call of death. The crowd responded in unison. He will never be forgotten. They opened the casket. It was empty. Until he looked at me. I swear to God, the man looked directly at me and smiled wider. Would the honored guests please step forward? The crowd parted. Every single face turned toward me. I laughed. Awkwardly. No. I think there's a mistake. You're just in time, the man said. It's always the ones who wander off course. They started walking toward me. I backed up, heart pounding. I'm not a soldier. You are now, he said. You joined the moment you passed the last flag. And suddenly it hit me. I never passed any flag heading out of town. Only in. I ran. Sprinted to my car, dove in, slammed the lock, and floored it. As I peeled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The town was gone. Just swamp. No buildings. No people. No flags. Nothing but trees and wetland. Like it had never been there. I got back to the main road an hour later. Signal returned. GPS booted up. I made it to Charleston just before dark. I didn't say a word about what happened. Didn't touch a hot dog. Didn't stay for fireworks. But when I got back home a few days later, I found something in the trunk. Folded neatly. A flag. Bright and clean. The kind they give at funerals. And under it? A photograph. Me. Standing in front of the fountain at Marrow's Rest. Grinning. Not blinking. Thanks for watching. If these stories got under your skin, subscribe for more true horror every week. Until next time, stay safe. And don't look back.